This week on Milk Street, we bake it up. We start in Seattle at Le Pichet Cafe. We do a mile-high quiche, which is amazing. Then a very simple cranberry and candied ginger buckle. And finally, from Vivian Howard in North Carolina, a sweet corn pudding, which is actually a souffle. Please stay tuned as we take some old recipes and make them new again.
Funding for this series was provided by the following.
For 25 years, Consumer Cellular's goal has been to provide wireless service that helps people communicate and connect. We offer a variety of no-contract plans, and our U.S.-based customer service team can help find one that fits you. To learn more, visit consumercellular.tv.
You know, I get to Seattle every fall. It's always sunny, by the way. Never rains in Seattle when I'm there. But I go to Le Pichet. It's a little French restaurant, kind of a bistro. So one year I noticed they had quiche.
I love the story you wrote with this recipe about how you discovered French food as a teenager.
Yeah, I was 16. It was 1967 in Paris. I was running away from my parents, of course, on the trip. And I ended up in this little bistro and had a great meal. And I just fell in love with French food because they treated you like an adult. Right. And the food was adult. It was the first real grown-up food I'd had. So quiche, you know, goes in that category. It's sort of grown-up food, but it's still a great recipe.
And it has a homemade crust. We are going to start by adding the cubed butter to the flour with a little bit of salt. And we're going to toss that together so that all the cubes of butter get coated. We're going to put this in the freezer for 10 minutes. This is just a little trick because using a processor, there's some heat that gets generated, and we want to make sure the butter stays nice and firm. So we are making this in the processor today, and now we're simply going to pulse this about 10 times until the butter is in pea-sized pieces. That's only step one. That looks good. So this is why we started with the cubes, all of the same size, because you want these little pieces to be approximately the same size. So now it's time to add the water. You also want the water very cold, just like the butter. So we had put ice in this previously and taken it out, and now we have 5 tablespoons in here. Just going to drizzle that in all at once. This is a little bit unusual in that regard. And then we'll process this until it becomes clumpy. Not fully into a ball, but just clumpy. That's clumpy.
So you're working the dough pretty hard in the food process. Normally you just cut the butter and the flour, take it out into a bowl, add the water.
You're giving it a little bit of a workout. The butter was in pea-sized pieces. Now it's completely incorporated. It's a very short, tender, delicate structure. Okay, we're just going to turn this onto the counter. I'm going to shape it about into a 6-inch disc, and we'll use our plastic wrap to finish shaping it. What this does, you can actually use the plastic wrap to pull the edges together. And then we'll just press it a little bit thinner. And this is just a little head start to rolling it out. Now, because we have developed some of the gluten in there, we want to put this in the fridge and let it rest for about an hour, and then we will be ready to roll it. Okay, so while that is chilling, we'll start melting the butter. This is 1 yellow onion chopped, and sliced cremini mushrooms. And of course, un peu de sel. That means a little salt in French.
Thank you. Peu de sel, thank you very much.
So as this cooks down, both the onions and the mushrooms will release a lot of liquid. They'll also start browning. We're going to let all the liquid evaporate. This will take about 15 minutes. So this is ready. As you can see, there's no more liquid in there, concentrated flavors. And now, of course, we have to add a little bit of white wine, and we'll bring that back up to a simmer and cook until all the wine is evaporated as well. The liquid goes away, but the flavor stays in here. So about 3 minutes. We'll keep an eye on that, and we will start making the custard. The silkiness of it is important. It's the 6 eggs that contribute to that lightness. So if you would do the honors of whisking the eggs, please. We found we loved the silky texture that creme fraiche adds to this, as well as that little bit of tanginess, too.
No, creme fraiche is sort of a secret ingredient. You can make an ice cream with creme fraiche and heavy cream. It also turns out really silky and smooth. Yeah.
Okay. Whisk into heavy cream. Because heaven forbid we use light cream with this. Now we have our seasoning blend here. It's salt and pepper, of course, and a little bit of cayenne, just a little bit, and some freshly grated nutmeg. And this is a really nice way to season this. And just get that going. You notice there's not a lot of seasoning. It's very subtle. Okay, so our custard is done now. We need to refrigerate it until we're ready to use it. And look at this. Beautiful. All the wine is evaporated, but you can smell it still in there. Now we're going to transfer this to a bowl because we want it to cool quickly, and getting it out of the hot pan is the first thing to do for that. So while the mushrooms cool down, we will get ready to roll the dough. Okay, time to roll out our fabulous homemade dough. This is actually my favorite part. We refrigerated it for an hour, but now it's been sitting out for about 10 minutes because you want it to be a little bit pliable.
Right.
So we need a little bit of flour on the table. I like to urge this out by a little pounding to begin with. This also softens the dough. It gets the butter soft without getting it warm. All right, now we're ready to start rolling. I prefer the straight pins. You want to use longer strokes rather than a bunch of short strokes, going from end to end.
I mean, this dough really rolls out nicely without pulling back.
It's a beautiful dough. Yes, I agree.
Well, the reason is the butter is well cut into the flour.
Yes.
And in American pastry dough, the butter's not cut in as much, which is much harder to deal with.
Okay, so you want a circle, obviously. If you get these odd little rivulets like that, just roll over them. Don't roll them out, roll over them horizontally, and that will widen them. So you want a 14-inch circle about 1/8 of an inch thick. So what we're gonna do is the folding method, quarters and a little one more. This is a good indicator of where to place it because we're folded the dough in half. You wanna put this right in the middle. And then just sort of unroll it from there. And then the trick is lift it and fall. Don't want to push it in like that and stretch it. You just want to lift it up and let it fall down in there and let the excess hang over the edge. Getting it into that corner is really important at this stage. There we go. All right, then fold it over like that. You've got excess dough. Easy way to get rid of it is to just roll over the rolling pin. I remember the first time I learned that trick. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world.
It's very satisfying.
Right. And then we'll just press gently around the edges. All right, so this needs to go in the fridge another hour because we want to let that gluten relax that we just developed. You can do this up to a day ahead even. We'll be baking this on a preheated oven steel, similar to what you might make pizza on, because that's the way the bottom crust gets really beautifully browned. So the oven has been preheating for a full hour at 450. Remember those onions we made earlier and the mushrooms? To that, we're going to add some chopped tarragon and Canadian bacon. You could certainly use American-style bacon, pancetta, or you could skip the meat altogether and add a little more vegetable. We're going to put this into the bottom of the pan first.
Leaving no room for anything else.
Seems like it. Would you spread even? And, of course, the cheese is what's next. Now, we're using Gruyere, which is the classic cheese you would use in a quiche, and it's been grated. And then we're going to pour the custard over very slowly until it gets almost to the very top.
Okay.
And
and now I get to do
yes,
this?
you
I
shall
see.
see.
So
Now go slow at first because you want to give the custard time to
you're
steep.
already worried about how I'm going to do this. Come
It's
on.
not like you haven't done it before. It's a lot of filling in there, and just the custard needs time to get down all the way down to the bottom, almost to the top. Going to go into our 450-degree oven, slide it right on top of the baking steel. As soon as you close the oven door, turn the temperature down to 350, and then this will bake for 45 to 55 minutes until it's golden brown on top and just still jiggly in the center.
Looking good.
It is.
Yeah, looking very good.
One more little note before we slice this and taste it. Because the custard is so delicate when it comes out of the oven, it's still a little jiggly, it needs to cool and continue cooking for at least 2 hours before you slice it. If you slice it while it's too hot, it'll
Just fall apart.
Yeah, it's worth the wait.
Well, now we don't have to wait anymore.
That's right. The crust is like butter to cut through.
So here at Milk Street, this is a first. We're going to actually have some wine because it's a quiche, and it reminds me of 1967, which was a very good year.
This is
And
gonna be
now
better.
for the main event. Words cannot express how good this is. It's rich, but it is light
Right.
in texture. The mushrooms, the onions, and
The creaminess, though, it's the creme fraiche in that custard that makes this incredibly silky.
you know, it's so great to go back to some of those foods of your childhood, especially when you realize how good they are. We updated just a little bit. But there are recipes that we should not forget, right? You don't want to get rid of the past. So if you love quiche, this is a Mile High Quiche from Le Pichet restaurant in Seattle, and we heartily recommend it, especially with a glass of wine.
That's right.
Bon appetit.
Merci.
Now it's time to do an old-fashioned American dessert, a buckle. This is a cranberry and candied ginger buckle. And it's an old-fashioned dessert, as I said, and we got the idea for this dessert from a baker in Portland, Oregon. Her name is Julie Richardson. She and her husband co-own Baker and Spice. Now, she likes old-fashioned recipes like I do, and she thought about the buckle. And what is a buckle? It's a rich cake with fruit, usually blueberries, and a streusel topping. It's called a buckle because the top of the cake buckles as it bakes and cools. The blueberries sort of draw down the batter, make it a little heavy. So she wanted to solve that problem, and she also wanted to add some fresh flavors to it and some richness. So what she decided to do was, instead of blueberries, to use cranberries. Cranberries obviously are tartar, brighter, but they have less water in them, and therefore will weigh down the batter a little bit less. And also she added some candied ginger to the mix and also sour cream. So we're taking her cue here to redo an old-fashioned American favorite. In the food processor, we're starting with 3 cups of all-purpose flour, a cup of sugar. We have a teaspoon of cinnamon and a little bit of salt in there as well. We're just going to mix that together for a few pulses. Now we have 12 tablespoons of chilled butter cut up in small pieces, and that goes on. When you do this, you're coating the flour with fat. It's sometimes referred to as reverse creaming. You really want to pulse this 15 or 20 times. You really want to cut the butter into the flour. When you coat flour with fat, you don't develop as much gluten. There's less interaction with liquid in the recipe, which means you get a softer, more tender cake. I've only done it a few times. Let me just show you why it's not ready. The flour is still floury. It's going to turn a little bit yellow, and it's going to get a little more like cornmeal, almost like crumbs. So it's not going to have that powdery look. That was 7 pulses. Okay, now you can see it's darker. It's a little bit more yellow because the butter's cut in, and it's not as powdery. It actually will hold together a little bit. So 20 pulses, and we're going to put that into a bowl. But we're going to put this back. Very often when you do a cake with a streusel, you can use some of the dry ingredients from the cake as a base for the streusel. So we're going to take a cup of the flour mixture and put that back in the food processor. Now we want to make the streusel topping. 3 tablespoons of brown sugar. Obviously you need sugar in a streusel for it holds together. Some sliced almonds. And 2 tablespoons of the cold butter. And we're going to pulse that the same number of times. This should turn into a texture a little bit like sort of wet sand, so it'll clump together in your fingers. Now we want to finish up the batter. So we have the dry ingredients here with the butter. We have 3 eggs, a cup of sour cream, and a tablespoon of vanilla. And that goes into this bowl. So we'll fold that together. So now we add the cranberries. It's a 12-ounce bag, either fresh cranberries or frozen. If they're frozen, you want to thaw them. And the reason is, if they're frozen, they'll get into this thick batter and almost seize the batter, so it's very hard to work with. And half a cup of candied ginger that's been chopped. So now into a 9x13 pan. We've sprayed this with nonstick spray, and we've floured it and then just tapped out the excess. And now the streusel goes on. So I'm just going to take the streusel and turn it into little 1/2-inch clumps. So you get a nice texture on the top when it's baked. The oven's at 375, 40 to 45 minutes until the center springs back and is cooked. Last thing, a little powdered sugar on top. It's a rich cake, but it rose very nicely, and the fruit did not weigh down the buckle, which is nice. And then, of course, the streusel topping is a little uneven, which makes it nice and rustic. So a huge thank you to Julie Richardson at Baker & Spice in Portland, Oregon, a huge makeover of a blueberry buckle. This is a cranberry and candied ginger buckle. You know, I didn't think I needed another souffle recipe until we came across this one. This is from Vivian Howard from Deep Run, North Carolina. You may know her, famous cookbook author, also has her own TV shows. A little bit about Vivian. She grew up in Deep Run, which she said was less of a town than a fire district. It's that rural. But she's a fabulous cook. And this corn, fresh corn souffle, may be the #1 recipe in the last year here at Moster. I mean, I've had this 15 times because they had to keep making it. It was so good. So we're going to make it for you now, and I think this will become part of your Saturday night entertaining repertoire.
Yeah, I agree. And the other thing that's so great about this recipe, because I think a lot of people get really intimidated when they hear souffle, and they're really worried about it collapsing and all of these things going wrong. But because of the natural starch in the corn, it actually does help fortify the souffle. Here we have 2 cups of corn. You need about 3 ears of corn to get 2 cups.
So you're not using frozen corn. This is the real deal, fresh corn?
That is preferred. If you can't get fresh corn, if it's out of season, you can use frozen corn in this recipe, but fresh corn is best. We have a 1/4 teaspoon salt, and then a cup of heavy cream. And then we're just gonna blend this for about 10 to 15 seconds. And that's it. And in this large saucepan, I have a 1/2 cup of all-purpose flour and a 1/4 cup of sugar that I've whisked in. And we're gonna go ahead and add this.
So this is a little bit like making a bechamel as a base for a souffle, is that what's going on?
Exactly, yeah, which is a very, very traditional technique. So I'm just gonna whisk that in first. And you'll see as soon as we turn on the heat, it will thicken. And you wanna be sure to stir it the whole time. And it's gonna come to a boil and get very, very thick. And this is gonna take between 5 and 7 minutes. Okay, Chris, this looks great. You can see how much it's thickened up. I'm gonna go ahead and just turn off the heat here. And then we're gonna start mixing in our butter. We have 8 tablespoons of butter here. I'm gonna add a couple tablespoons at a time. And the reason we add it bit by bit, it just helps it incorporate a little bit easier. Okay, this is great. All the butter is melted. You don't need to worry if there's a little bit of melted butter left in there because it's all gonna come together once we add our egg yolks. All right, I'm gonna transfer this to our mixing bowl.
Don't you think like Julia Child should be here now? Cream, butter,
I'm channeling her right now.
flour,
I know.
eggs. I
Yep.
mean, all the things she dearly loved.
So now while I'm adding the rest of the ingredients, if you wouldn't mind, we have a teaspoon of lemon zest and a couple tablespoons of sugar. If you wouldn't mind mixing that together, that's gonna be our topping. And while you're doing that, I'm gonna go ahead and add 2 egg yolks and then another 3 teaspoons of lemon zest and 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. And you want to make sure that this mixture has cooled down enough after you've added the butter, and if it's still a little bit warm, you want to make sure to let it sit for about 5 minutes just to come to room temperature. And you can see that as soon as I add the yolks, it really does kind of all come together. Our sugar is done. And now, the fun part, we get to whip our egg whites, which I know you love to do. And we have 4 egg whites.
So before I do it, there's Camp A and Camp B. Camp A is whip the egg whites slowly for 30 seconds to break them up and then fast? Or do you just put the pedal to the metal? Me
go
too.
for it. Go
I'm
for
with
it.
you.
Yep.
All right, good.
And we're going to add a 1/4 cup of sugar.
Now, do you finish yours by hand?
I guess it depends on the mixer, but this is your job.
Oh, I can't get any directions for you? I like to finish it by hand. Because that last little bit is kind of critical, right? I don't like mine really stiff when doing this, right?
Right, you want to get soft peak, but you don't want to overdo it. I like to think of whipping whites like stretching a rubber band. You don't want to stretch it at full capacity because you want to have it have a little bit more stretch in the oven.
Okay.
All right. So we're just going to add about 1/4 of the whites to start with, because you can see what we have here in the bowl, our base, is pretty thick. So before we add all the whites, we just want to lighten it a little bit. And I'm just folding in the whites.
And if you beat the whites too much, it's very hard to incorporate them into the batter.
They look like almost like styrofoam. And I'm just gently scraping the remaining whites on top. And again, I'm trying to be as gentle as possible to sort of retain the air that you've whipped in there. Yeah, and then you don't want to go crazy at this point. You want to just do it till you see no more white streaks of egg whites. Okay, now this looks great, and we're ready to transfer it into our ramekins. They've been generously buttered and then dusted with sugar. And I like to use a handy ice cream scoop to portion, but you can also use just a measuring cup or a nice big spoon.
Is that a Paul Bunyan ice cream scoop?
Right.
That's pretty big.
These are really nice and full. One more thing that we're gonna do before we top with our lemon sugar topping, I'm gonna run my thumb around the edge here and just wipe away the butter and the sugar and make a little divot. This is a really neat trick, Chris, and what this does is ensures that the soufflés are gonna rise nice and evenly up the sides. It's a little messy, but it's worth it. And now we're just gonna sprinkle this lovely lemon sugar on top. At this point, you can pop these in the refrigerator for up to 2 hours. So if you were making these for a dinner party and you were kind of a little, you probably don't get stressed, but I get a little stressed, but I'm doing a lot of other things. And you can make these ahead of time and have them in the fridge. Or alternatively, if it was just 2 of you and you didn't want to eat all 6 at once, you can wrap them in plastic and then foil and then freeze them for up to a week. And you can bake them right from frozen. And you just need to increase the baking time by about 5 minutes.
Well, I wouldn't eat more than one, but I would want to eat
You
more
would
than
want
one.
to, right.
Because these are so good.
All right, and that's basically it. And now these are ready to go into fairly hot, a 400-degree oven on the middle rack, and they're gonna bake for about 20 minutes. Okay, Chris, these look amazing.
Wow.
I know, this is so exciting. Aren't they beautiful? And you can see they're nicely browned on top, and they do just jiggle a little bit still, and they're perfectly done.
There's nothing worse than an overcooked souffle where the center's all dry.
That's very
You want the
disappointing.
center to be kind of almost liquid.
A little
Yeah.
bit gooey, and it does
Yeah.
continue to cook with the residual heat as well. Great. Now I'm just gonna give these a quick dusting of confectioner's sugar. I do need to warn you though, these are gonna be hot. And we are ready to dig in.
I learned a long time ago that the only thing that matters when you're cooking for other people is dessert's the last thing they eat. That's what they remember the most. But serve this for dessert,
Right.
and you're a hero. I mean, Ooh.
Yeah, this looks great. This is also really great with like summer berries.
Oh, that wasn't because it was hot. That was because it was
Really?
so good. Oh, this is so good.
The corn flavor really, really comes through. And you can see they're actually holding up really, really well.
I used to make a lot of souffles back in the 70s when everyone was making souffles. Grand Marnier souffle, chocolate souffle, all that stuff. This is up here.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing.
It's almost impossible to describe because you say souffle and you think of a thing, but this is not it. It's a cross really between, we call it a pudding. It's a cross between a pudding and a souffle, which is just absolutely perfect.
Exactly. I also think it's one of these desserts that tastes so much better than it sounds. So you really have to make it and try it because it's worth it.
Well, there are 4 more. So, if I'm not finished with one, satisfied with one, I can have more. So a huge thank you for Milk Street to Vivian Howard. If you guys cook this well in Deep Run, North Carolina, we're moving there tonight, I think probably. So sweet corn pudding is just a fabulous recipe, a basic souffle, except it uses sweet corn, and everything else is pretty much standard, except it comes out with a little bit of pudding texture and a little bit of souffle. You can get this recipe and all the recipes from this season at Milk Street at milkstreettv.com.
Funding for this series was provided by the following.
For 25 years, Consumer Cellular has been offering no-contract wireless plans designed to help people do more of what they like. Our U.S.-based customer service team can help find a plan that fits you. To learn more, visit consumercellular.tv.